All right. Hello, everyone, to the XCOM meeting. I appreciate you all being here. I bear some sad tidings that our commission member, Bob Planthold, has passed away suddenly, and we just found out about it recently. At the commission meeting, we'll make an announcement, and it would be wonderful if people who knew Bob well would spend some time with us to talk about him. I'll do the same. I think Kim wants to say a few words about him. I think he was very proud to be the chair of the Bank Grants Committee. He was the first client member since I've been on the commission ever to be a chair of a committee. And he was dedicated to our work. So he'll be missed, and we need to find a great replacement for him. That'll be difficult.
Yeah, Dan and I were reminiscing this morning at the program team meeting because Dan and I met with Bob to do an orientation for a new bank grant committee member just on January 19th. And so, I mean, we just saw him. It felt like,
oh,
And Selena, one of the things I wanted to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, is to put the word out that we would love to find someone who could give us the same kind of input that Bob has given us for many years.
I will. I don't know that we can find anyone who's as dedicated as Bob. Like, I sat next to him at so many meetings and we would just like chit chat, and I don't know if we can find someone with his level of dedication, but I will put the word out, especially for folks who have client eligible members on their own boards who would be good at that kind of work.
I've also am starting to put the word out. I don't think of replacing Bob because he is truly irreplaceable, but I think of getting another member, which brings me to a question, Dwan, for you in terms of eligibility. What is the indigent standard? Is the 200%
yes,
applicable? Okay,
200%, and it's not just 2%. I think I got to look at the statute again. I think it's more broadly in terms of our indigent category, so it's not just the income.
Okay.
There's an age, isn't there an age element to it?
Yeah, seniors, or a person with a developmental disability.
Right.
Any of those.
Okay.
categories.
I think I'm going to just suggest that when it comes to disability, that we think broadly and not limit it with developmental. I know what the statute says, but I think that we need to comply with the law. So yeah, and anyone who has thoughts, we need people. I'm talking to a few programs and in case they have client eligibility, but Selena obviously has a much wider reach. So thank you in advance for helping us out on that.
But Bob was the San Francisco resident, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It might be Oakland.
No,
Maybe was it San Francisco?
Thought he lived in the city, but
Okay.
I'm not
You
positive.
did be right then.
yeah, he did.
Okay, he did. Okay.
All right, so we're all here. Hi, Brady and Lauren. Nice to see you both. Do you want to do a roll call, Dawn?
Oh, Erica or Kim, or one of you, can you do the housekeeping first, and then I'll do roll call?
Sure, I could do it really quick. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission's Executive Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We're using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raised hand feature. To use the raised hand feature by phone, dial *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand, and do the same to lower your hand. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. As you know, all Legal Services Trust Fund Commission and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. And a friendly reminder that this is a video conference, and please be aware of your surroundings behind you.
Okay, I'll do roll call. Rhinus,
Here.
Savage,
Here.
Schreiber,
Here.
Venarelli.
Here.
Great. We have quorum. I'll do liaisons and State Bar staff as well. Selena.
Present.
Great. And I see Lauren's here on behalf of LAC as well. And I do not see Bonnie. Erica's here. Brady's here. And Chris is here. Kim Wormsley in our office is here. Great. And are there any members of the public who would like to introduce yourself at this time? I don't see anybody in the,
It's one person's
there's one
Dex
person.
Sebastian from LAFA. I'll allow them to talk.
Okay, should we do public comments now, Rich, too, as well?
Yes, I'd like to call for public comment and reserve the right to limit the length of any comments.
Okay. And Sebastian, you can introduce yourself. You don't have to, and we don't know if you have public comments, but we can unmute you.
Actually, I have no comment at this time. So yeah, just
Okay. Okay, great. We're gonna put you back into the attendee pool then.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Sebastian. We are now on to a consent item. Kim, over to you. And you're on mute.
Oh, Kim, you're on mute. Kim,
Okay.
okay.
One item, which is just approval of the meeting summary and action items from October 27th, 2021. If you've had a chance to look at that, are there any comments, corrections, additions? Hearing none. Shall we need a motion to approve
Yes.
these? Okay. Do I have a motion for approval of the October 27th, 2021 minutes and agenda item?
So moved.
Okay, Chris moves
Second.
and Christina seconds. Okay, I'll do roll call. Rhinus,
Aye.
Savage,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Vanarelli.
Yes.
Great, motion passes.
All right, now we're into item A under our discussions, and on over to you.
Great. So I'm going to do a quick update on the LRAP working group, Loan Repayment Assistance Working Group. So as you all recall, about a year ago, the commission had approved in their work plan an item to kind of take a look at recruitment and retention in legal profession and see if there's anything like policy work or any initiatives the commission could take on. And so part of that work, the commission, as well as two members from the commission, Bonachet and Eric represented the commission, two members from the Council on Access and Fairness, our sister organization within the Office of Access and Inclusion, and also representatives from the Access Commission formed a working group to see whether there's anything to be done around starting up a loan repayment assistance program. So in the past year, we have kind of bounced ideas within that working group. The State Bar has decided to fund a piece of the Access Commission's work related around there. They're going to be providing technical assistance to employers. There's some new tax provisions that enables employers to start up an LRAP program, and some of if they provide some funding to LRAP, then it's like tax shielded. I think the amount is 7,200 or somewhere around that. So it's been a great kind of statutory change, and the State Bar is funding that technical assistance piece. We're also at the tail end of the State Bar having kind of a proposal around LRAP, and Chris and Erica are both kind of on that working group, and Erica is the lead staff on that, and she has put together a really fantastic proposal on how, if the State Bar wanted to stand up an LRAP program that paid directly to borrowers, that could happen. And so I just looked at the memo. It's fantastic, and we're going to send it through internal review. Donna and Lee are going to review it, and then we're going to share it with the working group. That working group is going to convene early March to kind of talk about. There's some decision-making points that we'd love to get a little bit more feedback from that working group, and then we'll share the proposal to the commission in March. But I don't know if you have any kind of preliminary questions. It's just we've made a lot of kind of great progress, and we think this is kind of the right time to hopefully stand up some type of program. And the Access Commission is also trying to stand up we're hoping it will be a complementary program to ours. And I don't know if Selena, if you wanted to speak a little bit more on that, but and we can share kind of perhaps both proposal at the March 11th commission meeting.
Dawn, do you mind repeating what I could speak to? I was typing about Bob.
Oh, I didn't say, I don't know if you wanted to speak a little bit about the access proposal that's on the table. You don't have to, but Because we're hoping it'll complement ours.
Yeah, I think that they'll mold together very nicely. So the Access Commission has a report that they shared with the State Bar with recommendations around loan repayment assistance program with a heavy focus on tax opportunities. So I feel like it's a very technical paper in some aspects, because it really wants to lay out very clearly the reason why we should be doing more LRAP right now at this moment in time.
So we'll post both of those, our memo as well as the Access Commission memo, at the next commission meeting, and then we'll have a full presentation. Okay.
Great. Thank you. And Chris and Duan on item B. This has to do with the PLL program.
Great, and I'll just give a little bit of the context, and then Chris is going to go over the background. So this actually came out of a conversation between myself, Rich, and Kim. And Rich had this great idea of, the PLL program, the Provisional Licensed Lawyer Program, where and Chris will go through the statute again, just to remind you, the additional $5 a voluntary contribution that would go to fund the PLL program is actually sunsetting this year. So Rich was like, oh, is there a way that we can get a statutory change to redirect that fund somewhere, maybe to legal services or to something else? And we had a conversation with Donna, who thought that was really great idea. And so she talked to the legislature. So we pause right there, though, and then I'll give you what happened after that, once maybe Chris reminds you of where we are, the kind of the statutory requirements for that, and when that provision sunsets. And then I'll come back to Donna's conversation.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. It's good to see all of you. You should be able to see a slide now that says agenda item 4B, discuss possibility of. Yeah, Duan asked me to just kind of do a brief refresher. As this committee may remember, the full commission delegated authority of the PLL, Provisionally Licensed Lawyer Grant Making, to the executive committee, or I think to be more nuanced, like to staff in consultation with the executive committee. So the last time we presented on this was actually at like this committee's meeting last May or June. So I had to go back and like refresh my own memory of what the legislative history was. So this is just a few slides so we can all remember what these are about. All right, so to refresh your memories of the authorizing legislation, there was an assembly bill, AB 3362, and it added, or at least amended, a section of the Business and Professions Code. It happens to be section 6140.03. It's just kind of nice to put that on a slide in case you wanted to pull it up. It's pretty short, but to summarize it for you, this section has an expiration date. It starts on, it's effective January 1, 2021, so last year, and then it sunsets on January 1, 2023. And essentially what it does is it increases by $5 the opt-out donation to legal aid on the existing opt-out donation to legal aid on attorneys' annual license fee statements. This happens to coincide with 2 license fee cycles. So it coincided with last year's, which we call the 2021 cycle, and it coincides with this year's cycle, which we call the 2022 cycle. So there's like essentially 2 moments where donations come in. It created competitive grants, and this is we quote this here on the slide because we actually had to interpret this language in the statute to administer the grants, but to hire a PLL. So the committee may remember that we interpreted that as inclusive of hiring and then keeping your PLL on staff, but otherwise it was limited to paying for the provisionally licensed lawyer's salary, payroll taxes, and benefits, and nothing else. And the statute provided that it would go to current QLSPs and support centers, and that it would disperse any remaining funds by IOLTA formula upon the end of the provisional licensure program, which has for quite a while now been set to end this June 1st of 2022. Okay. Quick refresher on the program itself. It more or less launched on November 17 of 2020, and it runs through June 1 of this year. It was to respond to the pandemic's hardships on law school graduates. Essentially, it's much more nuanced than this, but at its most basic level, it permits practicing law prior to passing the bar exam if the applicant satisfies other criminal practice law and an attorney, a regularly licensed attorney, supervises and takes responsibility for the work. There was a moment where it actually became available to people who took the bar exam within the last few years who had a certain score, who scored at least a certain cut score, and they were able to apply for what was called the expanded pathway. There were 20 PLL grants that this committee made, totaling $1,359,000. One of those 20 grantees voluntarily declined its award because it decided that it didn't want to hire a PLL after all. It just kind of reassessed its portfolio of projects and decided this was not a good fit for it in the end. That was Family Violence Law Center. So it voluntarily returned its award, which was $65,000. So the amount to disperse was actually just $1,294,000. The State Bar has dispersed half of the funds so far, $647,000, and is planning to make the second round of payments this spring. And then I don't want to get into the weeds on this because it's a little out of the scope of this agenda item, but I will take this moment, I suppose, to update the committee that there's actually been an alternate grantee waiting in the wings for Family Violence Law Center's award, because this committee had authorized staff to follow a particular process for selecting an alternate if anyone turned it down. And they've been waiting in the wings. They've been waiting for the Office of Admissions to just finalize their hires license, which the Office of Admissions has now done. So we'll update you a little bit more on that later, but I just wanted to flag that.
Chris, a question for you. Can you go back to that slide for a second?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's on the next slide. I'm just curious, does the $1,359,000, is that net of administrative costs?
So great question. That was exclusive of administrative costs and Assembly Bill 3362, I think, the Business and Professions Code section that it created specifies that no administrative costs can come out of this $5 increase in the opt-out line.
So the $5 raised in 1 year, $1,359,000?
So the 1,000,003, actually we'll go to the next slide because it dovetails really nicely, but to speak to that now, the 1,359,000 was the amount, the total amount that the executive committee authorized for PLL grants. And that figure was at the time, so these grants, this committee met, I think, in mid or late May to make these awards. And at that time, we knew how much had already come in from the 2021 fee cycle. And we were projecting at the time how much would come in 2022. And it was a conservative projection. We had actually decreased it by 10% or something just to be safe. And so the committee made awards anticipating what the next year's donations might be. And as this slide shows you, we're still on track, I think, to meet, if not exceed, that projection. But at the time, it was a combination of known amounts, what is called actual revenue and donations, plus a forecast for 2022. So this is kind of getting at this slide sort of starts to get at that. So Dwan, this is my last slide before I'll turn it back to Dwan. Dwan wanted me to just give you the most up-to-date information that we have on how much is probably going to come in by the time this is all done. So we know now 2022 calendar year is closed. The 2021 fee cycle is over. We know, and I just, that little asterisks mean that I've rounded all these down to the nearest thousand. So the real numbers were $760,455 or something. But essentially, we know that from the 2021 fee cycle, it was a little over $768,000 in donations. As I reported on the slide before, we've actually already dispersed $647,000 of that. That was half of everyone got 50% of their grant payment. Which leaves $121,000 that's already sitting in the State Bar's accounts waiting to go out. And then this is what we project from the 2022 cycle, which is ongoing. Attorneys needed to pay their 2022 bill, I think by February 1st, but in reality, a lot of them actually, those payments come in late and people continue to make these $5 donations over the ensuing weeks. So our Office of Finance projects that the 2022 fee cycle will bring in about the same amount. So we're projecting $760,000 again for 2022. So that's just the same number that came in 2021. The reason they think it's going to be about the same is that year over year donations tend to be very level. And the amount that came in December, this last December, which is considered part of the 2022 cycle, was very similar to what came in the previous December, like within a couple of thousands, like a couple $1,000s. So they said, if that's anything to go by, if history thinks anything to go by, you can fairly assume you're going to bring in the same amount this year as you did last year. So for the purposes of today's conversation, how much might come in every year, where at least economically the country and California looks similar like as it does today, $768,000 per fee cycle per year is probably a good operating number. Could lower that a bit if you wanted to be conservative. I think that's probably what Dwan really wanted me to like leave you with. I will just say that this last bullet point, this does mean that what will be available this spring is the $121,000 that we had left over from 2021, plus the $768,000 that we anticipate coming in this year, which is $889,000. $647,000 of that is going to be the second half of the payments. And then if this alternate grantee actually comes through, some of it they'll end up getting part of Family Violence Law Center's award. But anything that's left over after that goes out by IOLTA formula pursuant to the statute.
Yeah, so the big takeaway is, about 750,000 per year from this $5 opt-out contribution. So the good news is that the legislature is not only really interested, that they have draft language right now to keep the $5. So the placeholder language right now is that the money, instead of PLL program, because that's sunsetting, is going to go to legal services. However, they are very open to the idea of, if the state bar wanted to make a proposal that this funding can go to something else, they would entertain it. But at the very least, there's placeholder language, legal services, and what that means, that will go out through the IOLTA formula. So Rich and Kim and I met, and we thought that maybe a good, just to see, and we might want to leave it like that. But since this is an opportunity, it's not a large amount of money, but it's not insubstantial either. That perhaps we should convene a meeting with LRAP as well as the Access Commission to see whether there might be some consensus around directing this money to some other purpose. For example, maybe there's an Access Justice Initiative, maybe funding something rurally related, something underserved, something pandemic, disaster relief, just to have that initial conversation to see if there's any interest, and then we can move from there. If there seems like there's consensus, it seems like the legislature, again, might entertain that possibility. Doesn't mean it's for sure, but if we're able to go to the legislature and say, this is the proposal from all three entities, I think that would buy us a lot in changing that. But at the very least, there's placeholder language, and that $5 is going to continue.
That's
Selena?
great.
Selena has her hand up. Can she go, Rich?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Yes, our intent at the original time was to revert it back to general funds, and that's why that language was in there. But I agree, Dawn, that this is a great opportunity to think through how that could be used, because I think that a lot of organizations they prefer general funds, they love general funds. But Lauren and I are hearing repeatedly over and over again that organizations want to pay their law students. And that is one of the huge pieces of our recruitment retention work, LRAP, the State Bar, and the Access Commission, that in order to encourage more people to enter legal aid, they need to have less law school debt. And one of those many solutions is to pay law student summer law clerks. So that might be one idea. My only worry is that means you would be doing this same, Chris, the same kind of like fellowship application again. And I don't know if that's what you want to do. But I do hear that feels like an acute need in our community, that organizations can't figure out how to pay law students.
Thanks, Selena. So the question to the executive committee is whether we would like to move forward with this, meeting. It's not a working group. It's really just an informal meeting. Can kind of get the pulse of LRAP and the Access Commission. We would need probably a representative or two from the commission or from XCOM, however you want to decide to do it. And I think Rich and Kim had an idea too, as well.
Kim, you want to talk about your rural idea?
Well, I'm not sure it really was developed much, but we've had this ongoing conversation about a focus on rural and whether there's any particular project that could be developed. And then Rich kind of layered on the idea of access for really remote communities and clients, and whether or not there was some kind of technology project we could do. But I don't think our discussions got really very deep into the weeds. We were more concerned with getting a representative to.
Oh yeah, that's the piece I was talking about.
In the meetings.
Exactly.
And there is one person on this screen who we were going to recommend. Christina?
Why did I have a feeling?
Maybe because I was looking right at you. But, you know, we just kind of want to spread the opportunities around as much as possible. And I don't think it will be a particularly great amount of time, but I also think that you would be very good for it, just with the idea of your creativity, having been on partnerships for a long time. I think you would be a good match if you'd be willing to take it on.
Thank you. Sure, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I like Selena's idea a lot. It carries forward, it seems to me, the original intent, which was to help folks who are not licensed to practice in the traditional way to assist legal services. And so it's an extension of that, and the legislature might find it a worthy kind of earmark for the funds, as opposed to just generally for legal services. So that's quite appealing, but let's flesh it out. I hope that you all have some suggestions or thoughts about what we might do, but I have, as I told Dwan, I have sort of a proprietary interest in this $5. I don't want to lose it. I want to keep it so that we can put it to the folks who need it.
So in terms of process, then Christina, we'll work with you to kind of, Chris is actually going to be the staff that's going to organize, coordinate that call, and I'll participate, obviously. And Rich, I wasn't sure, I think you had expressed some interest in also joining Christina, but I don't know if you wanted to leave.
I'm happy to, yeah.
Okay, so Christina and Rich then. Great. And we're not going to do a formal, it's an informal meeting. So why don't we have the meeting, and then we can then report back either to XCOM or the full commission, decide depending on how the progress of the meeting. Okay, great. So I'll turn it back to you, Rich.
Yeah, I think on that, just as a final, we're going to need somebody to carry the ball to the legislature with the idea ultimately as it's fleshed out. So any volunteers on the screen would be welcome at that point. All right, we are now going to move into a more robust discussion about CalHFA. Dwan, you're up. Great.
And I have a short PowerPoint just to kind of go over, but I'll give you a little bit of background. So late last year, the California Finance Housing Agency have been in talks with Lauren at LRAP because they were interested in distributing some funding to legal services around foreclosure prevention. And so there was some discussion between the Access Commission that Lauren put in touch the agency, the CalHFA, with the Access Commission to see whether they should be in the position to kind of distribute the $12 million. Rich and Kim also had a few conversations with the Access Commission, and we're deciding whether it should be the Access Commission is in the better position or the Trust Commission. And there were several meetings between then and now with CalHFA, without CalHFA. And so where we are in terms of that $12 million, the agency has not determined who will receive the funding, but let me go over kind of the broad strokes. And if it were to be us, like what the timeline might look like. So let me share my screen and pull up the PowerPoint. Okay, great. So again, this money is coming through the California Housing Finance Agency. It's $12 million for foreclosure prevention legal assistance. And the genesis of this money is in 2020, if you recall, the state budget as part of bank settlement funds that they received had $331 million of total funding. The state bar received $31 million of that 331 to provide, as you all know, homelessness prevention legal assistance. The other $300 million went to CalHFA to provide direct rental assistance. So this $12 million is coming out of this $300 million pot. And they want to carve out some funding to go directly to legal services from their tranche of the money. They are proposing, and we had a chance to kind of look at the scope of work and provide some feedback, but their proposal right now, it's that it would be a 3-year grants for the $12 million, a competitive grant process. They've said that it will be at least a 5% administrative fee, so it works out to be it's about $600,000. And so they're seeking what they call as an intermediary, an agency that will be responsible for completely the grants administration of the $12 million. It's really, really, really quick timeline, and I'll show you in a bit what the timeline might look like. And we, Chris and I, as well as our senior financial analyst, did meet with them yesterday to do a risk assessment of our agency. So they asked a lot of questions about, the single audit, our fiscal protocols, and so forth. We don't have right now an update on where we're at on the process, but I have communicated to LAC that we need to know fairly quickly because the timeline is so short. So what we had proposed to them, and Rich and Kim were part of this meeting with CalHFA, is that the state bar could do it, but I went back and talked to staff to see kind of what the shortest time frame that the state bar could do it, and do it kind of responsibly with kind of state bar processes and oversight. And the quickest time that we think the state bar could do it is 4 months. So we provided that timeline to CalHFA, and they were a bit uncomfortable with that. I think they wanted us to shave off about a month from that, do it within 3 months instead of 4 months. The state on our side, we just, that would be just a bit too short. Hold on, let's go and share from the beginning, sorry. It would be a bit too short, so we could not do it under the 4 months. So we went back to them and said, we can't do it under 4 months, but how about, and Selena and I had talked some creative solutions, like perhaps once the grant starts, we can let programs like claim expenditures backwards, kind of like we did with PL grants. We can do a better job at maybe letting applicants know that if they were a real contender, that most likely they'll get it, just being good job so they can gear up to hire. But we really couldn't move back an additional 3 weeks, and you'll see why in a minute. It's already really, really tight, even to do the 4 months. So let me walk you through kind of the proposed timeline. So today we're meeting. And then the CalHFA is hoping to finalize the contract at the end of March, end of February, beginning of March. The Trust Fund Commission, the next meeting, as you all know, is March 11th. And at that meeting, they would need to approve the timeline as well as delegation of authority. And this is really important here because I did talk to Rich and Kim that this really super fast timeline can only be done if the commission decides to delegate authority, say to staff and maybe perhaps a commission member or 2 commission members, or maybe XCOM. But if it went through the regular committee work, we could not do it under this 4-month timeline. We would have to add probably a month and a half to it. So Rich and Kim felt confident that they could convince their colleagues that would happen. And why this is really important is by the time we go to this commission meeting, we would already probably be in contract with CalHFA before then, or very close to it. So we're doing a little bit out of order, but we're hoping that this will work. So then the staff is set to kind of work on the application now. We're geared up in terms of staffing. Danielle, who's on our Danielle McCrae, who's in our office that Chris supervises, would be the lead staff on this program. Chris and I have talked extensively. We've talked to Smart Simple, our online grants making system. So all the people that would need to be involved are kind of geared up. But again, we don't want to invest a lot of time and energy. We've already put in a lot of time if we're not going to get kind of the funding. So we have communicated to LAC so that they communicate to the agency that we need to know fairly quickly, because then if they come back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're not going to be able to make this timeline. We need to really like start work like this week in order to be able to meet this timeline. Oh, Rich, I see did you want to say something before I continue?
Well, you're about to go into the biggest jump of all, and it's really a question I wanted to pose to Selena. We release grant apps on March 30th and give 4 weeks to complete them. Could that time be shortened at all?
Lauren may have more input on this, but from my, Lauren, I'll let you talk because it's really you and Lisa who have more knowledge about the programs.
Short answer is yes. I think it will depend on what is involved in that application, what the programs have to put together. But the organizations that are wanting to do this work already have programs figured out. They're not going to be, I guess, coming up with new things from scratch. They're anticipating that this funding might be coming. I think that they could put those agreements together quickly. And I think that CalHFA would be very supportive of a simple or more abbreviated application process.
Selena, could you hold your thought? Maybe I can run down the timeline with all the caveats, and then if you don't mind. Oh, sorry, there's, I didn't leave so we would start work on like pretty much this week, and then we would need about 6 weeks in order to draft the application, build it on Smart Simple, get our finance team set up, pre-invoices, like all the infrastructure stuff. We need about 6 weeks, and that's not really movable for us. So then we also have an informational webinar late February. Then we would go to release the application March 30th, and then they'd be due May 2nd. So this question here about shaving it down. So even if we shaved it down and we moved it up 2 weeks, it really doesn't help the state bar, because we'd like to be on a quarterly basis because of all our grants. So we don't think like shaving off here. So you could shave off like say a week here, a week there, but we need to, this is already really, really tight for us. I wouldn't suggest that even if you wanted to shave off the 2 weeks here, I would say then to give staff that 2 weeks because we only have 4 weeks to score. So the applications will be due back, and then staff would have a month to score. And then depending on how you want to delegate authority, I'm imagining either the committee or the commission would then convene one more time before grant agreements go out. And then we would hope to have a launch of July 1st. So this was the question that has been asked to me by, I think, almost everybody at CalHFA, at LRAP. Can we shave off this timeline? And I guess from the staff perspective is we cannot. The July 1st is like for us, but that's already like super, super fast. Can we do a week here? Can we do half a week there? Perhaps, but we also like have staffing challenges in our offices, and we have already prioritized in order to make this a priority. Like as representative of the staff, I don't think that would be fair for the staff. So we could do this, but it wouldn't need to be this timeline. Okay. And then Selena had her hand, and then Kim.
So I think that if there is, not to shave the timeline, don't worry, but if you're worried about the quality of proposals, you could share the draft application in advance so programs would know what questions to ask before it's formally released. And so that might improve the quality of applications without impacting the timeline. So that was my only suggestion, because I think that you do really want good applications. And if you're worried about the 4-week turnaround with vacations or whatever, then I know you've shared draft ones before.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. And I think, this is from what I saw from the scope of work and then the list of activities, this is really kind of run of the mill for closure prevention assistance. I mean, this is, loan modification, reverse mortgages. This is stuff, if the program's already doing it, it's going to be very easy for them to put together a grant application. I have complete faith that something will come together very nicely for us. Kim?
So as I understand it, this is the proposed timeline that we have submitted to CalHFA.
Yes.
And I don't believe we should be engaged in any tweaking of it at this point, because that's what's been submitted. I like Selena's suggestion that maybe the application could be put out a little bit earlier, if there's any possibility of that. And I think that would help with, yes, better applications, but also on time submittals, because I don't think there's going to be any wiggle room for late submittals is my guess. So I think that's a good idea, but overall, I would say with this timeline, this is what we've submitted to the state, and we should work on consistency before CalHFA.
And
given-
my one other thought is, even though the grant period wouldn't begin July 1st, say, all the applications come in, programs don't wait until the very tail, and we could start beginning to review applications once they all come in. We may not need this full month, but I think we should definitely build in the full month, because Lauren has said that, we think in the world of, 15, 20 applications, that definitely is doable. And if that remains the case, then perhaps we'll get through them more quickly the first half of May. And depending on if you delegate authority, and it's more streamlined, if we have kind of a working list, what we can do and what we have done with other discretionary grants is go back to programs and say, this isn't finalized yet. The commissioner, whatever authority hasn't final, but it looks like you're going to get a grant. Why don't you gear up, get your postings in order, talk to your staff, kind of do all that. And so that could buy them a couple more weeks.
So just one quick question. The third item up from the bottom is the approval of the committee and the commission.
Yeah, so I put that in there, but I think the biggest question is what the executive committee wants to pass as a motion to recommend to the commission in terms of how to delegate authority. Because if you're delegating authority just to staff, then we wouldn't need that meeting. I don't think, reading the room, that our commission would be comfortable with that. So then our other suggestion is perhaps delegating authority to maybe Kim. Kim and I have been working really closely on the scope of work. She was the chair of the bank grants committee. She's a housing attorney. She's been brainstorming on everything kind of related to this. And then if the executive committee doesn't feel comfortable with that, then maybe add in both co-chairs. And if you're not comfortable with that, then maybe executive committee. But what we can't do that will not meet this timeline is if we delegate it through, say, the Homelessness Prevention Committee or the Bank Grants Committee. It just is not going to move quickly enough. And then break out into review teams, and we're just not going to meet this deadline.
The other thing I think that we discussed with CalHFA is that the number of qualified candidates for these grants is not 100 and some odd. It's a smaller group of our typical recipients. Isn't that right, Dawn?
Yeah, so it's Lauren and Lisa. Lisa is the representative from the National Housing Law Project that's also been kind of negotiating these grants. They think in the realm of, Lauren, like 15, maybe around there.
13 to 15.
Yeah.
So the approval process will really relate to those 12 or 15, as opposed to normally what we have to go through are many more applicants.
Yeah.
So under those circumstances, it seems to me that your recommendation is one I could embrace, and that is that Kim oversees staff in that review process and have the delegated authority to approve it on behalf of the commission.
But Christina, what are your thoughts? Because you might be hearing this for the first time. And so we wanted to get your reaction too, because the commission obviously will be hearing it for the first time.
I think it sounds good.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, if you're good with the timeline,
yeah,
it's pretty scary amount of work to jump into.
Kim?
So I would actually feel comfortable not being involved in it and giving the staff the discretion on this, given what we already know about these grants and the number of programs that the work will be. It's pretty predictable. But I'm certainly fine as a fallback position that, there be someone from the commission involved in it.
Well, I would frame it differently, in that maybe the better way to handle it is that staff would go to you with any questions or any issues that might be thorny, as we use that word in the working group. If you're comfortable doing that, I'm okay with that.
Right, that's fine. I mean, I'm fine with either way. If it appears that the commission wants to make sure there is some linkage with a commission member working with staff, I'm fine with however you want to phrase it.
And I have a proposed motion, and we can tweak the language because I didn't know the direction the executive committee would go in. So let me share it. I have to stop and then get out of the share view. Hold on. So here's the proposed motion, but again, we can tweak it based on what you all think. So this top is about the timeline. So it reads, the executive committee recommends that the trust fund commission approves the timeline for the 2022 foreclosure prevention legal assistance as outlined in the PowerPoint. And then, oh, and the big caveat here is sometimes we need to like deviate by like a day or two because there's a glitch in Smart Simple or somebody's out of the office. So that's generally kind of the timeline. And then this is where we need to work on. So further resolved, the executive committee recommends that the trust fund commission delegate authority to staff. And then I didn't know what you want to keep. And this first part relates to approving the request for proposal and building out the scoring rubric. And then the second part of it is, and then the scoring of it. So the scoring of it, I gleaned this from the PL grants, how it was in consultation. So it wouldn't be an official, like, unless, you know, I could always change that if we went to the committee direction, the executive committee. But if it's just Kim, then maybe it's just in consultation. And I don't know if you want to leave and Kim here, and then we would check in with Kim with our RFPs and stuff. So I could just take this all out.
Yeah. Chris said, Schreiber, what do you think of that language? Taking that out and leaving the in consultation on the last line?
Yeah, that's what I'm just sort of.
I'll just take it out and then we can always tweak it just so you can see what it looks like.
What about the rubric itself? Is this saying that the staff is going to develop that?
Yeah, so in this in this version, it's staff and Kim that's going to be approving the scoring rubric, and then we just consult with Kim. So we wouldn't officially need Kim's approval for the scoring of it, but obviously we share them, and you know that's not how we operate in this office. We would work with Kim. So it makes you feel more comfortable. We can say, I can change it in consultation and just say, and to staff and Kim to score.
I'm very comfortable with the delegation of everything, except I think that the commission needs to have needs to touch that scoring rubric.
Sure. So do you want me to say right here? Let me see. So for the, and to staff and Kim to score?
Not the scoring itself.
Oh,
I
not the
just
scoring
mean the
itself?
development of the rubric.
Oh yeah, because the development of the rubric does have Kim in there.
But I think what Christina's saying is that the commission, the
Oh,
timing.
gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't know, how would that work timing wise though?
We probably could, hold on, let me look back at the,
You want to do commission or the XCOM?
so we could probably squeeze in, let me think. So we're trying to release, where did we trying to release application? Release application,
30.
The end of March. So we would need to convene again sometime early March. That's why I think if it's a committee, then XCOM is just fewer people and it's a bit more flexible.
I do that. I think that's.
You think that? Okay.
Yeah, can I just ask right now, are you anticipating any, particular deviation from the rubric that was used in either?
This is where I'd like to get a little bit more info from CalHFA because they don't use kind of the terming like scoring rubric. They I don't even know if they use the term competitive grants, but we talked about formula and they are definitely don't want it to go out to a formula. So the only alternative then is some competitive process. And then we didn't go into kind of process wise what that would mean, but we would suggest to them a scoring rubric because how else are we going to score the applications? But I think that would be based on, they have a list of what are qualifying activities. And on top of that, they've layered on like, there's certain preferences that they want. like underserved, and I've asked kind of what the definition of that, and Lauren is getting that for us in terms of there's like a code section or so, it references actually something, but it was vague in that scope of work. So there's going to be based on something that CalHFA, you know, their preferences, and then we'll meld it with ours if we want to say give into the scoring rubric like the organizational capacity or some of those other categories that we usually adopt.
Yeah, I think it's got to touch the commission then.
Okay.
I'm Christina on this. It feels like there are some unknowns that would be hard.
Okay.
So I think it's probably enough for it to come back to XCOM, and then if we felt like it needed to, you know, be dropped into the commission, I guess at that point we could, you know, make the further decision. But
so maybe so instead of Kim right here, I'll put an executive committee.
If it helps, the commission delegated authority to the HP Funds Committee to approve the HP3 scoring rubric. And that was only because those grants also needed to go out really quickly. So there's a precedent for
well,
maybe
Yeah, but
delegating
they-
it to the executive committee
But
instead
they
of
did
going
that
back.
first. This is my concern, that we're just doing something without,
Oh no, this is going to go to the commission for approval.
okay,
But you're not, you know, like, yeah, it's just
Okay.
like, the only awkwardness is, like I was saying, the contract, where we're going under the assumption that the commission is going to like adopt what the four of
Yes.
you say. And
Okay.
they need to, right? Or else we're going to be in breach of contract.
Yeah. Okay.
So we need, you're right. Your instinct is right, Christina and Chris. We need something that will make the commission feel comfortable that it's being done responsibly.
yeah, I just would note back to Chris that the second, sorry, Brady, I jumped the queue there. Just that delegation took place after a full year or maybe even 2 cycles of the HP Funds Committee. It already sort of had multiple conversations.
Right. And we were adapting an existing rubric.
Yeah, so it feels a little different. My sort of trepidation here, maybe I'm channeling Christina, I don't know, so I would presume to, but it seems like FHA, like they potentially have several categories, and what you said, Juan, that gave me a little bit of pause was like preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Given how public our process is, it just gives me,
Yeah.
it just raises concerns that like all of a sudden we're like seeing a preference that. That's all.
No, it's a good point. And this is why we want to talk, to you all. I mean, no, that's good. I think, and I think that still works for our timetable. And I will work immediately to schedule something with the 4 of you sometime the 1st or 2nd week of March then.
All right, and Brady had his hand raised.
I was just going to suggest if we're going with in talking about the RFPs and the scoring rubric, delegating to the executive committee, we should probably take out staff because I think that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Obviously, staff will make a proposal, but
yes, that's good catch, Brady. Yes. Okay, so so let me read both motions again. Okay. So resolve, the executive committee recommends the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission approves the timeline for the 2022 foreclosure prevention legal assistant grants as outlined in this PowerPoint presentation. And it also resolves that the executive committee recommends the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission delegates authority to the executive committee to approve the request for proposals, including scoring rubric for the 2022 foreclosure prevention grants, and to staff to score applications in consultation with Kim.
With the Kim Savage.
I mean,
That's right.
do we think that's going to get through, or do we think that the entire process needs to delegate authority to the executive committee, as opposed to just sort of singling me out here on this part?
I think this will fly.
Me too. Can
to score them, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Can I?
Christian wants to say something.
I just wanted to ask the question, which is, it is the case that like if something were flagged to Kim would have the authority to like say that I can't do this, or I don't want to do this. This should go to the full commission.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anybody on the commission, like if there's something that staff does or that's a decision that somebody feel yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That makes me feel fine.
Yeah, you probably should say I'm co-chair by my name, just so it doesn't look like, somebody on the street was picked up to do this.
With the same name.
Some lady. That's
There
what the G is for.
There are people with my name.
Brady,
I think you just want to take off the and at the second to last, the last word on the second to last line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe just as long as I'm talking, add a B to the executive committee on the second line of the second resolved.
Add a what?
The executive committee,
It is here. You guys have good eyes. Okay.
all right.
No, thank you.
And then do we need to go back and change the PowerPoint presentation outline to reflect that executive committee is now involved, or is that it was a general?
Yeah, let me add right here. So I'm just going to add a line up here and say in March, and then Chris and I need to confer with Danielle and when that we can pull together to get those meetings. Let me add.
RFP, right? Yeah.
Okay.
this is sort of a coachable moment for commission members on what it takes to get grants out the door.
Oh, so then this then I'm going to take off because we decided not to delegate
Right.
scoring.
So we need a motion to approve the resolution at the executive committee level.
Let me go back to the motion. Okay. I'm going to go off screen so I can go to my roll call sheet unless somebody wants to have a few more minutes to read the motion. Okay.
I'll move.
Chris moved. Great.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rich. Okay. So roll call. Rich,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and Christina.
Yes.
It's a little bit late for this one, but Sebastian was on the phone. I don't see his name any longer and he reserves sort of time to comment. I wonder if he is still with us.
I don't see him.
Sebastian is
No,
left.
he hung up a long time ago.
Okay, thank you. All right, can we move now to, Donna's not here, so how about new commissioners and staff?
Oh, we should couple that with I'm sorry, I put that in the annotated, it was supposed to be the next. We're going to wait for Donna for E, but we can do D. I apologize for that. We're going to wait for Donna to discuss the new commissioners and staff recruitment,
Right.
but we could do committee assignments for now. Okay, so I'm going to share with you the new committee assignment roster, but the only real difference now is the nominations committee. So.
Well, there's another real difference. Our bank grants committee
Yes.
chair is no longer with us.
Let me share. And I left Bob on there because until Rich and Kim, you decide on share my screen. Great. So here, so the only two people from the larger commission that volunteered for the nominations committee were Pamela and Eric. And so it was, not that many commissioners. So Kim and Rich thought that, they'll join to help to kind of round out.
For some reason, I thought I had.
Oh, did you? I must have missed that email.
I give my spot up to Chris.
No. If you, I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't see the email.
Maybe I just did it in my head and not.
No, no.
That's
I-
okay.
I
Well,
No.
wait, that would be great. Terrific.
Okay.
Yeah.
so I'll
Terrific.
do that. Okay, great. Great, so that rounds out, that's nice then, the four of you. So we will need to, and then Kim would chair that committee. Right, this was yesterday, okay, Kim would chair this committee. So I'll send out an email because we definitely need to convene this committee like as soon as possible. Because applications for the state bar side are due and we have to coordinate. There are a number of vacancies, and we're gonna wait till Donna gets on to talk about the recruitment because there's been some conversations with the legislature and when they're gonna appoint their members. And so she has insights into that. Okay.
Can I ask this is a question maybe for Brady, if I may. I don't know if now.
Of course, Chris.
Why is there a deadline for applications?
Sorry, I was just I was looking at something else for a minute. Which deadline? Sorry.
Why are there deadlines to apply?
For a grant or for
Or a position on the commission or for any state bar commission, for example?
I mean, it's just administrative ease. I mean, I guess if we wanted to, you could have rolling applications and just have a stack of them.
I guess I can give a little bit more insight because I process the application. So on the state bar side, the board usually convenes in the summertime to make appointments in for them to go into effective in September. So we just work backwards. But I usually it's lead staff member that processes all of them. So it's not a hard deadline. Like if there's somebody you know that was interested or somebody that even I knew was aware that was interested, like I'll process it up until the date that in the memo needs to go to the board of trustees. On the commission side, you all need to kind of just figure out a process for commission appointees because you have 4, but that's how it's done on the state bar side. And it's fairly flexible, like again, because I'm the staff that processes it. April 1st is the deadline, but if someone gets it in 2 weeks, we're still reviewing applications. I mean, we had a number of late applications last year and they got reviewed. We don't get a high volume, unfortunately. So it's not an undue burden for staff to do it.
So actually that is why I think the date is discouraging.
Yeah.
Because if you get notice of this, as you often do, on like March 20th, then you're like, there's no way I can put it together in 11 days or whatever. But if you can turn it in whenever, I mean, we are talking in the terms of applications for commissioners of a volume, and frankly, in terms of preparing a commission applicant for a state bar for the annual meeting for approval, that could put some pressure on staff to review applications. But honestly, I feel like getting rid of the date would be really useful because you would end up, you could just say like, applications are reviewed at the beginning of every month or something like that. Because I guess I want to be able to recruit people year round, even if they aren't brought onto the commission and maybe need to do one updating thing or something like that. I would just scrap the deadline. That's fine.
Oh yeah, and I guess the deadline, is for the state bar appointees, but I have gotten applications kind of what you call out of cycle, like it doesn't come in between February and March and April, and we hold it. There are a couple of current commissioners that had applied and either for whatever reason didn't make it on for that cycle, or the application came in a little bit after we had made the appointments and we held them. But you're right, maybe for on the commission side, we certainly can do it differently. I mean, I had suggested to Kim and Rich this, but we can modify this approach because the easy thing, and I was thinking maybe I was selfishly thinking about myself, is if we use the state bar web application and just had me kind of process both of them. I send you the commission everything, and then we figure out between the commission and the state bar who would recommend for this state bar side to the liaisons on the board side, and then you all would develop a process on how to make the the ultimate appointments on the commission side. But I thought at least if it's one application, it would be easier for me. So I was thinking selfishly, but we don't have to
Well-
combine them. You can all develop your own separate process. It can go through a separate process. It doesn't have to go through me. If you want it to go through, it's up to you.
Well, let me just say, Dawn, when the nominations committee becomes so successful that the volume of applications overwhelms you, then I will recommend that we have a date. But until then, if the flow is okay,
Mhm.
I think getting them in sort of catch as catch can is good, because
Yeah.
we want to try to get some folks onto the committee that are good. And I don't know, I would just say, like, you might meet somebody at a lunch in June or whatever.
No, absolutely. And I hope part of the task of the nominations committee would be to also develop the process for appointments on the commission. Because I don't know how you're going to do it this cycle.
Yeah, I would, Chris, I think that we may see in the next slide when Donna joins us, our ability to appoint through the nominations committee has been reduced substantially. We now appoint, what, 6 members to the commission?
No, the commission appoints, has no seats right now. So you will get to appoint 4, because right now it's currently Judicial Council and State Bar Board of Trustees.
And 2 are public members.
Yes.
Absolutely the hardest to, as we've said, hardest to recruit.
So that was the agenda item D. Rich and Kim, I don't know if you want to skip over and wait for Donna for E and then go to F right now.
Yes, I think that would be preferable. So Kim and I can handle the exit interviews. Kim, do you want to talk about Justice Murray?
Sure. So we had this idea that it would be good to speak with commissioners when they were leaving the commission and get some feedback from them. And so I spoke with Justice Murray by myself. I think Rich was unavailable, and then we both did Zahira Mann together. We also have their authorization to share their feedback with you. So Justice Murray had 3 main points. He was first complimentary that the commission was, he liked the idea that the commission was always coming up with new ideas of things to do and new approaches and analyzing things. He said there's nothing stale about the commission. And so he was very positive about that. He believes, his second point was that he thought that the State Bar Board of Trustees liaisons were a very important, had very important roles, and they should be participating in the Trust Fund Commission meetings much more and could be helpful to the commission. I think we've heard this before, so I'm not sure there's much more to say about it, although we might try to really encourage the liaisons to join us. We've had Mark Tony on with us, I think, a couple of times. And then the third thing was, which I think I brought this up to him, was our challenges on having diversity within our commission. And he did have some suggestions to us, suggestions for a couple of people who might come on and take his place. Both are completely spread too thin and wouldn't come on. But we appreciated his suggestions on that. And I invited him back whenever he felt that he had time. He's just was a terrific commission member. And so it's a very good interview. He really liked the idea of being able to, express his views on departing the commission. And then we went on to, Rich and I had a really good conversation with Zahira. I'll turn over to Rich, but I just want to say the one thing that really stuck out that she said to us is she thought that for grantee applicants that we should be adding in the application a query about their recruitment towards diversity and what each program was doing towards that. And I thought it was a really terrific idea, and Dwan thought that that was something that could be included. So I'll turn over the rest of the discussion with Zahira to Rich.
Well, Zahira talked to us on January 7th, and she said that she was brought in by Helen to work hard on the diversity issue. After Helen left, she felt that the focus had changed. The idea of having exit interviews is to find out what we could do better. And her feeling was that Helen had a focus which was lost. And she'd like to see us work hard to pick that up again. So the nominations committee can learn, I think, from that observation, and we might be focused in our recruitment to answer that issue. She said she felt that the liaisons played an outsized role in our deliberations, and she wondered about that. You know, we didn't have any comments other than to take this information down and to then get her approval to report it to you. So there you have it. And then she, I would say, was overall very excited to have served, to use her term, on the commission, and felt that its work was very exciting and worthy. And as a volunteer who is spread relatively thin, like most of us, I think she felt that what she did was of great value, and what the commission does is of great value. And I think she left with a sense of pride.
She was very positive. She was very positive, and indicated she just, in her new position, she has 45 meetings a week, and that there was she was talking about her. I think she's a substitute on the Coastal Commission, and she said, you know, that's a lot of work. But she said, in comparison to the Trust Fund Commission, where meetings get added on out of necessity, of course, the lack of predictability is a problem for her. And she said she thinks it could be for some commissioners. But overall, she was extremely positive about her experience.
Selena has her hand raised.
I apologize for the informality. We're house training a rescue puppy, so I'm outside now. I think that Zahira's point about focus on diversity is really interesting. And if the commission is interested in diving into that a little bit more, I just did a presentation to the board of the Van Lobensel's Rimby Rock Foundation on how funders could be more supportive of organizations who are trying to increase staff diversity and board diversity. So I'm happy to share that information in any sort of format that you think is appropriate for liaison. But we did have some ideas of what a funder could do to help organizations.
Does one of those ideas include putting it into applications?
Some funders do. I don't know, Dwan would know better, and Brady, whether or not you can ask those questions as a state agency, but some funders are asking demographic information as part of the grant application process, both for the board demographics and staff demographics. I don't know if the bar can do that.
Yeah, I mean,
she wasn't suggesting that. She wasn't suggesting that. Asking for demographics. I didn't mean to interrupt, but she was not suggesting that. I'm sorry if that was what I conveyed. She was saying she wanted to know, she wanted the inquiry to be, I believe, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, what steps are you taking,
right,
to make sure that you have a diverse staff? Not who do you have, but what steps you intend to take, or what steps are you taking?
More interested in policy and procedure than she was in demographics. Duan?
Yeah, I just want to share, when we go on monitoring visits, we made it a habit now to kind of build in questions around whether programs have formal or informal ways to, amplify diversity and inclusion amongst recruitment and retention. And, we're really happy that last year there are a lot of programs that have very formal programs, and it has seemed like it's changed kind of the culture of legal aid. I mean, in a very, very quick amount of time. Whereas I think before the pandemic, it was, you know, you on like out of 30 something programs that we go to visit every year, you hear it here and there, but now it's almost across the board that there's something there for staff. So it's great.
Any other questions on this item? If not, we will move to item H.
And item H is the one that we are, you're on G actually.
Oh, right. We changed.
H we're skipping today, but G.
Yeah.
And that's you and Kim again for fiduciary duties of trust fund commissioners.
So we've had some discussions with several of the commissioners who are also on Access. And this came up as a unexpected consequence of our conversations about the HFA process in which we were requested to be an intermediary and Access was requested to be an intermediary. And suddenly we had 4 of our members on both sides of that question. Kim and I had in-depth discussions. Lauren participated in it. Selena participated in it as well. And there was a level of discomfort as to whether or not a conflict had been created by what appeared to be a somewhat competitive environment for funding of the HFA loans. This was before the procedural issues became overwhelming and pretty much eliminated Access. So as a result of those conversations, we then have had conversations with Jim and with Catherine. I will be speaking to Judge Jaskell, and we have one other member on both, I believe. And we talked to Brady about it, and Brady issued a short memorandum, which was very helpful to us on the issues of conflict and recusal, should that arise, with a recommendation that when a conflict exists, as in any case for voting on the commission, that those who are on both sides of such issues, Access on the one hand and the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission on the other, recuse themselves simply. The conversation, most recent conversation with Catherine was somewhat difficult. I think Catherine felt that it was an unnecessary conversation and that she did not feel a conflict existed, and that more was being made of it than needed to be made. But, you know, perception is sometimes more important than reality. And while it may not appear fully that there is a conflict here, the perception of conflict was a concern. So we've had discussions with Catherine about this, and of course, she'll make decisions as to whether or not to recuse herself in the future. I doubt this is going to come up again, but it may. We don't know, because Access is relatively a new entity at this point on its own, where they will develop as a funder or not. But in the event that they do to continue the small grants they're doing now, the likelihood of competition is small, but they do have a certain ability. They are more nimble than they claim they are more nimble than we in being able to process such grants. You can see it takes us 4 months. And for them, a selling point would be that they are able to move more rapidly to get funds out of the door. So it's possible we'll have more conflicts in the future. Commissioners on both may find themselves in an uncomfortable position, so recusals would be expected of them. Kim, you want to add anything to that? You're on mute.
So we have, I mean, between the two of us, we've spoken to 3 of the 4 individuals who sits on both commissions. And I would just say overall that the calls were for the purpose of just reminding them that wearing 2 hats, they need to make a determination when there is a potential or appearance of conflict and recuse themselves. And I mean, they were typically brief calls with just just that exchange. And certainly, I would say that they went just fine.
Any questions about that from anybody? Some of you may serve on Access in the future, and just for your information, and we'll be alerting the commission to this issue briefly. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, to be honest with you.
I think the only other thing I add is that I think that both commissions are finding their way working with each other. And I think the goal is, there's a mutual goal, which is, the community we serve, the programs we serve. But I think that, you've got a very established commission with a deep infrastructure, and then you have Access, which is kind of the newer entity that is, I think still figuring out its role a little bit. And but we're hoping that we will be complementary of each other's work.
All right. Any comment by anyone on that topic? All right, then, Duan, you want to go to?
We're on I now because we're not doing H today.
Okay, fine.
So we'll do I. So let me share the draft commission agenda. I'm going to go through it really quickly because some of it is just kind of routine business. Give me a minute to pull it up. Is this big enough, or should I? Okay. Okay. So there's the consent, and then a couple of state bar reports. The main one is going to be IOLTA and Justice Gap revenue update. And I don't know if you've all been following the news, but the Federal Reserve is set to increase interest rates at least a few times this year. So we are gearing up in the office. We have letters that our automatic letters are being drafted, and I think Elizabeth has already worked with the team to draft them. And so as soon as interest rates go up, then we send out the notification. But as you all know, we don't have statutory authority over banks, so it's going to be a negotiation. And we've been working with our consultant, who's the national consultant, to kind of figure out once they go up, like how quickly will we start to see the revenue, when will we feel the impact? And he thinks probably best case scenario, even if they go up a couple of times this year, we're not going to really see that increase in a meaningful way until the beginning of 2023. So, we've been messaging to programs the increase, but I think I need to message to them that even though there is an increase, it might not show up. They might not see the increase in distribution for another year. We'll have a better sense once the Federal Reserve does raise what that will raise to, and then once we have a couple months worth of remittances, we'll have more refined projections. But it's all moving in a good direction. It's just we don't know how quickly it's going to happen. And then I have A, B, C, D, and E are all executive committee related items from today that we'll talk about at the commission level, and one of them is the CalHFA, the timeline and the distribution plan. And then the HP committee just has some very administrative things to vote on, the grant budget, and then the B, the grant reporting. So the grant reporting itself is very administrative, but there is going to be a motion that's, I would say, a bit more at least at the Homelessness Prevention Committee, had a more robust conversation. And I know Rich, Kim, and Chris were in that committee. So I think Kim and Rich would like to have a full discussion of that motion at the commission. So that actually might take a little bit of time on that agenda item B there. And then partnerships is also, very administrative in terms of discussing and approving late grant application budget revisions. The big substantive here is partnership 2.0. This is letting programs apply for an additional increase of funding for projects that have already been funded, but because of the increase in EF funding. So they'll be bringing that proposal to you. The Rules Committee has a couple of substantive items that has now gone through Rules Committee and will be coming out to the Commission. A recommendation around late submissions of applications and reporting requirements, the distribution plan and grant reviews for discretionary grants, and then we'll provide an update on the functional matrix. Selena and Bonnie will do their liaison reports. And then I left on here the presentation by grantees because I know that was Kim and Rich, you had requested it. Do you want to continue with this? We have East Bay Community Law Center. They had a last minute cancellation last time. So I could reach out to them to see if they're available for March. And then I don't know if you wanted to then have me find a second program to present.
Kim and Christina.
I really like having these presentations. I think it brings home to everybody and helps inform the newest commission members about the importance of this work. I also think it makes the programs feel really good and creates potentially a friendlier relationship with the state bar and more positive view of the work we do. So I'm all for it. I haven't thought about who we might want to include. So I would open that up to everybody, but I'm in support of them. I know they don't get much time. That's a bit of a problem. But at this point, they're not traveling to come to the meeting to speak for 10 minutes.
Christina, I didn't mean to call on you, but if you want to.
I was gonna say, I didn't think I had my hand up. No, I don't. I agree with Kim though. I like it.
You didn't, but you have a beige something in the background, right where the hand would be, and I mistook that for a hand. All right.
Great.
There's a missing number 11 there.
Oh, I think that was just a typo. I'll remove that. And so this is just a draft because there might be something else from Big Grants Committee, but I didn't get that agenda item yet from the committee coordinator. So usually I send the agenda to Chris and I'm sorry, to Rich and Kim a couple weeks before the posting deadline. And so if there's anything else, Chris and Christine, that you want to also add, just email me and then we'll get it on there.
We'll take a moment or two to talk about Bob.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I don't see Donna, so I'm prepared to kind of give the update on her behalf. She wanted to be here to participate, but I know that's the last agenda item, so
fire away.
We can proceed. Okay. So let me pull up my PowerPoint again. Okay. So the former composition was the Judicial Council had 10 appointments, 10 seats, and the State Bar Board of Trustees had 14. So with the passage of SB 211 that changes Business and Professions Code 6210.5, this is now the new composition of the commission. So nothing changes on the Judicial Council side. They still have 10. Of those 10, there are 3 non-voting judicial advisors. There are no term limits on Judicial Council side. So what changes is here pretty drastically. So the State Bar moves from 14 to 6. And then the 8 remaining are divided between the Trust Fund Commission gets 4, 2 have to be indigent, the Senate gets 2, and the Speaker gets 2. So I did a little bit of an analysis on kind of when people are terming off. Oh, the other thing I should add is the legislation puts term limits at appointments can serve for 2 4-year terms, 8 years. And if you are appointed as chair or vice chair, you get an additional 2 years, so maximum of 10 years. But it goes effective January 1st, and those term limits don't start to tick away until January 1st. So for instance, Chris you know, actually all 4 of you have been on the commission for quite some time, you know, multiple terms. We don't count those past terms. It would be starting January 1st. So technically all 4 of you are welcome to apply and stay on the commission for 10 more years if you would like. So it doesn't start until January 20 this year. So that was a point of, we weren't sure if that was the case. We were reading it a little bit more restrictively, but we did get clarification, and so that's good news. Okay.
So the nominations committee, to go back to that slide, will have to find, when we have vacancies, 2 indigent members and 2 others.
Yes. Okay. So here's who's terming off this year. We have 7, but we don't have to worry about the Judicial Council side because Bonnie will take care of that appointment. So it's really these 6 that we need to concentrate on, filling their positions. And then I have for 2023, which we don't need to look at too closely, 2024 and 2025. And we do want to make a note. There was the Rules Committee has already made 1 appointment. Clifford Klein, who has his appointment is effective a couple weeks ago. So we reached out to him. He can't make it for the March commission meeting, but he's on the commission now, and we'll set up an orientation with him. But because the Rules Committee reached out to us, they actually gave me a call and was like, oh, you know, congratulations, you have a new appointee. So I talked to them, got that all in order, but then that raised the question of, you know, our natural terms don't end until September, and they're in their right because the legislation isn't effective January 1st, but we actually thought that they would wait until September to appoint. And so Donna has been in communication with the legislature to see whether it would be possible, so it wouldn't be as disruptive for the commission, whether they could wait to appoint the other position as well as the assembly to wait to appoint the other 2. And we've been told on the assembly side that they might want to appoint somebody quicker and not wait until September. So if that happens, then the commission will need to decide who to ask to vacate quicker. I mean, my thought and Donna's thought is it might be least disruptive to select out of the 6, but again, this is like your decision. And I don't know in terms of, maybe this is the nominations committee developing the process, but I did want to bring that up, that there might be a possibility that a few commissioners might need to be asked to leave earlier than their term ends.
The 6 you're referring to is the 2022 crop.
Oh, sorry, yeah, this these 6, sorry.
Not including Corey.
Not including Corey, yeah. Okay, so here's what we think the proposal should look like for 2022. So of those 6 vacancies, the state bar would appoint 1, the commission would appoint 2, and you know, I did this before we found out about Bob. So let me put Bob's seat aside for a second. But the commission would appoint 2 that are the non-indigent seats. The Senate has already appointed 1, so they have 1 more, and the Assembly 2. But with Bob's seat now being open, you could probably fill that quickly and appoint 3 this year instead of 2. That's the one modification here for on the commission side.
But assuming that all 6 wanted to continue to serve, they would have to be appointed largely by Judicial Council.
Well, not necessarily, because there's no term limit. So if they all wanted to serve, say, you know, a state bar appointed 1, the commission appointed 2, we would still need to find 3 spots. And we're trying to figure out a mechanism whether we could, is there, I don't know we don't know what the application process is like on the Assembly and Senate side, but we would love to be able to like send anybody that's interested a link to apply over there as well. It's just we're trying to figure out that process. And that's why I was hoping Donna could come in and give us a little bit more insight on that piece. But because, I mean, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But we'll do.
All right, are you going to shepherd this process so that if this all 6 of us want to continue, you'll kind of guide us as to where we should be applying?
Well, and maybe my email wasn't clear. If people are interested, then they should definitely just put in the application now. And then I will funnel it through for the state bar and the commission appointees. I don't have control over this, the Senate and Assembly, obviously, but for the
Right.
state bar and commission, yeah.
Okay.
I can help with that process.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's unfortunate. And maybe they'll wait till later in the year so that we don't have to ask somebody to vacate earlier. But yeah, there's quite a number of seats being turned over, but hopefully people will just reapply. Okay, so I think that concludes.
All right, Kimberly Wormsley, we are still not joined by any other member of the public.
That's correct.
All righty. Well, then I think we're ready to take Chris's question.
Actually, real quick.
Fire away.
Oh, so I've sent the announcement, Juan, about the vacancies to my listservs. And so I'm taking a more active role in trying to find people. But I think we should really encourage other commissioners to hit their communities in a way that they have not. But I'm wondering, and I was going to ask this question, Donna, but I guess maybe you know, but I know the bar posts stuff on its website and whatnot, but what about all the various county bar associations and things like that? Because I wonder whether there is, a systematic posting in various legal circles for the commission, including, by the way, I would just say CLA, which are all the affinity groups. And same question, I guess, for Selena in just tapping their community in particular for public members. I just feel like the onus is really on us after the passage of this bill.
I mean, I know the state bar has a listserv. I can't tell off the top of my head whether it includes bar association, but if it doesn't, then I'll ask for it. Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion.
Selena has her hand up.
It's in response to Christian's, I guess, advice. That's the word I'm looking for, advice. California Lawyers Association does have a bar association president call every couple of months. So that would be a great way to do outreach, is just ask whoever's running those calls after Ellen left to mention Trust Fund Commission as an option. There's several dozen people who join every month, and they're usually head of their own local, regional, specialty bar association. So it's fantastic outreach.
Great. Any other thoughts or comments in conclusion? Kim.
Well, I think, Christian, were you also suggesting that we post the openings on their websites? Because I know I get the California Lawyers Association, there's a lot of announcements on that, and whether we have the ability to do that, I guess.
Well, so I'm sort of I want to recognize like this tension that we don't want to be shoulder tappers. Part of how we end up, undermining diversity efforts is if we are actually not affirmatively reaching out in order to try to be a diverse commission. So, but having said that, the other tension is that you just don't find anybody. So I want to sort of do both, which is make sure that we're targeting organizations that have that kind of reach, as well as our own networks. So, I've sent this out and I'm hopeful, but have not yet seen it on a couple of my alumni boards, the Critical Studies Board and the Public Interest Board, as well as some of the professional listservs that I'm on, and I'm waiting to hear back from a couple. I will tell you, I tend to like sell it a little bit differently than the bar probably posted. So, I do think there is something to be said for like a personal touch, but I would say sort of mow better on this front.
Yeah.
But,
I
but
think, oh,
Agreed.
good.
I think the personal, I mean, I'm making calls to particular people to see if they've got suggestions. And I mean, I just today got some good ideas. So I think they're better, but yeah, there is this tension between the broad sweep and, you know, the personal contact. And I agree that what we say to people in terms of the importance of the commission, I think is key for the kind of people we want on the commission.
And you know, I think there has been more personal touch, and I know maybe it came from you, Chris, but the last 2 weeks I have received 5 emails of people that are interested. I sent them the application, which is for us is high volume. We usually on a lucky year get 5 applications. So to have at this point 5 people that are even interested is great.
I'm
So it's
really,
definitely an increase.
yeah, I'm heartened to hear that. I'm really heartened to hear that. So that's good.
Yeah.
The other question I have, and I guess it might be really for Bonnie, is how we can work with the other nominating bodies in having kind of a unified approach and picking the kind of people that we think will be able to get in and do the work.
And I know, Bonnie, last year the process changed slightly. It got tweaked in a good way, that the 2 co-chairs were very involved in the process of drafting a memo of a recommendation that went to the Judicial Council of who they thought from the pool of applicants who should be nominated on that side. So I hope that she can continue that, because that it's a nice collaboration. And then the one thing I have to talk to Bonnie this week at our check-in about is the statute, the other substantive change in statute is that the Judicial Council now appoints the chair and the co-chair. So Bonnie, Judicial Council will need to figure out mechanism for that, because before it was the State Bar Board of Trustees, and as you recall, usually I send out an email asking if anybody is interested. People submit a statement. It's usually uncontested, and then I work with the board liaisons to finalize the recommendation. Then goes to the board. Now it's going to go to on the Judicial Council side.
Well, just, I mean, when hearing that there may be another 10 years of commission service, I also recognize that this is self-interested to make myself quite obsolete. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for that.
All right, shall we move to adjournment?
Yes, and to that note, I wrote to Senator Wiener, his staffer, about Bob, so I should have an update today or tomorrow about
Oh, that'd be great.
resolution or adjourn in memory.
Oh, that'd be so nice.
Thank you. That's great.
So in Bob's honor, I will move Bob Planthold
Yes.
Memorial motion to adjourn.
I second in his honor.
Yeah.
Take
All
care.
those signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. And the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.